Hi, everyone, and welcome to Invention Mode. I'm Tanya, and this podcast is about what it really takes to spark meaningful change inside modern organizations. I've been wanting to create this space for a while. I talk to so many smart people doing inventive things behind the scenes. Not the flashy innovations, but the small, clever fixes that quietly unlock big value. You'll hear me say invention a lot, and that's intentional. Innovation tends to get the spotlight, but invention, it's often quiet. It's when someone finds a smarter way to route a process or connect the dots, and those moves add up, sometimes more sustainably than the big stuff. Each episode, I'll talk with leaders, experts, and accidental inventors who rethink how things are done. We'll explore how to build a culture where invention happens every day and why that mindset matters now more than ever. Welcome back to the Invention Mode podcast. In our previous episodes, we've already mentioned AI as an unavoidable force in modern finance. But today, we're shifting our focus from simply acknowledging its power to examining one of its most tangible impacts, how we interact with financial data. For years, the dashboard has been king, the cockpit for every finance leader, a collection of charts and numbers that give us a snapshot of our company's health. But what if the dashboard is reaching its limit? What if the next big leap isn't a better chart but a conversation? Imagine this. Instead of clicking through tabs and filters to find why a client's payment behavior has changed, you could simply ask your data a question and get a clear, plain English answer, pulling data from your TMS, emails, and compliance logs all at once. It's the promise of conversational AI as a new data interface. But making this shift requires more than just buying a new tool. It requires a new kind of readiness, AI readiness. It forces us to think about data quality and skills to ask the right questions and how we move from simply observing data to actively interrogating it. So, is this really the end of the dashboard? And what does it take to be ready for what comes next? To guide us through this, I'm thrilled to have a guest who sits in the intersection of AI, data, and finance. I'm so pleased to be joined today by Daniel Huszar. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
For our listeners, Daniel is an AI strategist who focuses on practical applications from testing sales pitches to building go-to-market strategies. With a background in negotiating multi-million euro contracts for financial software across more than 10 countries, he understands the high-stakes world of finance where trust is everything. And he definitely brings a grounded real-world perspective to the conversation about AI in this field. Daniel also hosts his own podcast, Discover the Ordinary, exploring the intersection of AI, work, and human side of technological change. So, Daniel, while preparing for this episode, I was looking at some of the projects you share online, like the AI for film recommendations or the Sherlock tool that sifts through headlines. It got me wondering, how did you first get into building these kinds of things? And is this a side passion, or did it all start from a business need?
Yeah. It's a really good question because it started from a business need way back in my previous role, and I needed to be a part-time engineer because we were a small team, and we needed to get those demos on track. Right. And even before LLMs, this took a bit longer than it does now, but you kind of need to show the client what they want to see so they know that you understand them. And the software is kind of proof of that, is part of the proof that you understand the business process behind that. So always a tool builder, always thinking about the product that I was selling back then. And and right now it's like this. I share mostly the tools that I build for myself and for our company. Just because, I am not allowed to show many of the tools that I build for clients. That is one thing. And the way that it started is actually, these are true business needs because I publish a lot of content. If I didn't have an AI writing 80%, 70, 80% of this for me, I couldn't do it. The same for research agents or stuff like that. It's just not possible without it. And I actually tailor it to my writing persona and what it interests me. So it will only give things, the results will only contain things that are somewhat interesting to me and can output these patterns. And maybe to close this, a lot of my clients don't even care about AI. They care of the results that I achieve, right? Like a really a sales strategy, the pitch to refine the pitch, for example, or build a prototype, things like that. Um, but some of them asked, especially when LLMs came around, like, how did you do that? And can we use the same tools? Because I mean, I kind of saw like that was very quick. So how did you write that? How did you actually research that? We suspect it's AI. We cannot prove it. So it's kind of half-half, and so yeah, so a real business need um to be efficient, but also to make clients better, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. And you also mentioned something very interesting for me. You said if you're personally interested in something, it just helps. So I think, right, in our life, when we try to separate, these are my professional interests, these are my personal interests, sometimes we go too far with this, right? You're the same person. So pretty much anything that's of interest to you, you'll do better with this, if you can blend somewhat those interests and find, the application, so to speak, or similarities in your professional life as well. So
Mm.
I even sometimes, like personally myself, I even sometimes, and we discussed this briefly on LinkedIn just this morning about films and movies, and how some content you saw just kind of strikes certain thoughts, and then you start, oh, in my professional line of work, this is important as well, right? Don't you think it's a good blend?
This
Yeah.
is this is such a yeah, this is such a great thought because I mean, I would ask you like a counter question, maybe like, do you think AI would exist without science fiction? Maybe not,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Like it kind of bridges this gap between what seems to be impossible or what can be possible and where we are now. And in a way, like if somebody would have told me, even when I was, thinking about machine learning and applying that to working capital and how can we see more patterns and stuff like that, that was exciting for me. It still is. But if you would have told me at that time, 10 years ago, like, no, you can talk to Aristotle or something like that. You can just talk to a large language model, whatever that is, to an AI, that would be insane. Like
Yeah.
Iron Man, Jarvis, you can build this.
Well, even having a video conference as we are having right now was something unimaginable, like, well, imaginable, but rather not deemed a reality, even like, I don't know, 20, 25, 30 years ago was something so far, but here we are, it's so common these days. So yeah, it's fascinating. But it's
Yeah.
it's one world that we are immersed in now, right? So I think the more creative people get with their thinking these days, maybe the better off they are professionally in their jobs too, because it's all now kind of one in a
To
sense. So, yeah, that's
absolutely.
interesting. It sounds like that hands-on building is giving you a very concrete sense of what's possible, and is it exactly what led you to a bigger idea you've written about in your article, the end of the dashboard? I'm really excited to talk about that because this is how you can use complex data, and it isn't something that you have to have pre-built, but something that has intelligent interface. So, can you talk a little bit about this and what drove you to write this article?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It was partially, tool building using LLMs for hours every day, because it's very useful for my work in general. That and frustration with the kind of data and the insights that we have in working capital, which are extremely great in a way. We're very granular data. We're at the pulse of the company with the invoices, with the transaction flows. And, but, and then I thought, what if we add another data layer on top of that? Or what if we could talk to that data, and that, led us like many years back to explore machine learning, with, to find new patterns. And then I thought, wouldn't it be, now we have natural language. We can just ask the data to tell us about these correlations, or say, I'm suspecting that, for example, this client here, they're growing very fast. It's crazy. And I know this guy. He's, been a client for 10 years, but they are a supplier of the automotive sector in Germany. Not doing so great. Sorry to be a bit negative, right? But how does that make sense? And I can ask these kind of data synthesis questions in natural language. And that, like the little bit of a frustration and a curiosity with LLMs, it led to that. And I think, the title was provocative, which works on LinkedIn sometimes, right? But I think we need dashboards, but because it's an initial visual cue, and then you can filter, click around, or drill down, and all these kinds of things. But what if you see, like, let's make sense of these numbers in a different way, or also even for a junior. Imagine someone goes into risk in working capital, in treasury, I don't know, right? And they look at this stuff. It's hard to figure out. They could have like a small agent telling them, okay, you know what, like, this is what this means in treasury. This is what these two numbers mean combined. I don't know, because I'm not a treasury guy, but yeah. So
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
these kind of things, and this is the music evolution, that the evolution that I described in that article. So you had the messy MP3 collection, like everyone else who was pirating, like this kind of thing. Some people organized it, some people didn't. Then you had iTunes, with all the labeling and stuff like that. And now I don't need labeling anymore. I have Spotify sitting on top of that layer, organizing everything. Nothing is messy anymore. I can search for anything, and everything will be good quality. And this is a new abstraction layer that sits on top of the dashboard, that sits on top of our data. And now it happens that we can just use natural language to interact with our data, which I think is completely insane. And it's not even that hard to start with smaller, more focused use cases, because the models are so good as well, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it does seem that it's a sort of an evolution of the structures we use in our workplaces, right? And so the analogy you're using with music, that's an evolution of a structure of the way you interact with your kind of listening library, so to speak, right? And so now I agree very much. It kind of the same pattern led me to very similar thinking as far as dashboards. Although, again, yeah, I agree with you. We don't have to kind of stop using what we've been using for such a long time. We can definitely continue with the processes that work well. But then on the other side, we don't have to be so kind of we don't have to stick to this flow anymore, I guess. And we don't even have to rely on reporting and dashboard as much as we had to in the future, because now we have additional options. So I think it's all about optionality and just the ways that you can quickly retrieve certain numbers. I always make this example in I've spent 20 years being a treasurer and all. And so in large corporations and in smaller and even nonprofit companies. And so the one thing I keep hearing everywhere I work is one kind of phrase: we know we have this data somewhere in our systems. We just don't know how to get to it. So, right?
Yeah.
I think this is the time where we can finally uh, kind of streamline this, build appropriate data layers, and companies really should be thinking about getting into this right now and just making sure they are working on, they have a roadmap, because this is the important part. Data layer, having it all in appropriate kind of places and having appropriate access to it is key to be able to really work, have this insight on your fingertips, for
Mm.
the CFO, for finance professionals,
I,
because that's how you can access it quicker.
yeah, I totally agree. It's like a universal translator for all your data. I
Mm.
mean, we can't just mindlessly dump it in, but it's much easier to kind of have like a structured requests to your data or something like that. And what I would add is we can ask questions that we couldn't ask before, just
Right.
because LLMs are, okay, at some lookup like research requests, they are not even that good because they're not 100% reliable, and in a lot of cases, and but it still works very well. But if you have a senior expert like yourself, sitting in front of a treasury dashboard and just talking maybe about risk or liquidity planning and these kinds of things, you can ask it questions, and you can make these kind of predictive analytics where you say, what if the business does X? What if give me 3 scenarios, right? Very bad, medium, very good. So how does this evolve? And then the dashboard, the LLM can live draw you the graph if you want. And
Yes.
to me, this is completely insane, because this used to take many steps of iterating thoughts like in your head without seeing anything on the screen. And now we can do this much faster, much different insights. And actually, we're not sacrificing so much in that case, because you're an expert. You can tell me if this output is complete nonsense.
Right.
Or you can say, you know what? Let's think about that. Let's sleep on it. Let's try and formulate a strategy tomorrow. Like this, we couldn't do that before. That's
Yeah.
fascinating to me.
Agreed. So much stronger decision support for sure is available now. Let's get very practical and let's talk about this. If a treasury team is intrigued by this idea of a conversational interface, where is the best place to start preparing for this conversational future, in your opinion?
Hmm. So there's like three things that come into play here. Um, First of all, well, I would say, what kind of questions are you asking that an LLM should answer in a perfect world? Maybe let's start there, because this is the fun part, right? Like, this is like, what would I be excited about? It doesn't
Uh-huh.
matter if it works or if it doesn't. At the moment, a lot of things might work. And then you need to actually think about the data and data curation that you're doing, because I don't recommend just dumping everything inside an LLM. You can actually do that in some cases, to have gigantic prompts, and it will still be usable, especially if the model is really smart. But in business contexts, we should look at the data and curate it, and maybe have like a small assistant, something like that, something that we build. And then where should they start? Well, we have the senior users, and they will figure out if the dream was achieved, or if we got somewhere with this. Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
dash.
very agile
Yeah,
approach. Hmm.
very agile. Yeah, very agile. You need to be, because this technology is evolving so fast, and a very agile approach. And also, the actual dashboard is not that important. That's maybe the funny thing about this. Like, it's more like, what question should be answered ideally,
Yeah.
um, but that we cannot answer with the dashboard itself quickly.
Yeah. No, and this is not that as obvious as it sounds. What is the right ask the right question, right? It's a skill of its own, which I think developing kind of working to develop these skills is going to be so beneficial across the organization for everyone really. Instead
Mm.
of people even kind of more junior analysts and everything, people focusing less on how do I get to this field, to this data point, how do I run this report. So instead of focusing on that part, focusing on why do I want to run this report, and what action do I want to propose based on this report. And this is what people should be focusing on more than anything
Mm.
else, right? So that's
Yeah,
actually a very good skill to build.
yeah, and this is like, yeah, it's like business sense prompting, translating that into a prompt. But if you can do that, and that is great for a team, like you're interacting with the technology, amazing, upping the skill set. But then you can get to the questions. It's like, so I always wanted to know this about our data. Or is there any way we can answer this question? Because that would unlock X new clients or X new liquidity because we could trust them, or X new limit in factoring, and we could, because we could trust the client more, the business case more, our system more, something like that. And that is, for me, that is the real ROI. That is not
Yeah.
even measurable because it's infinity in a way, because I just couldn't do it before
Exactly,
LLMs. Yeah.
exactly. Well, I'm very excited for this development. It's also not only from the business value standpoint, but the value to the to actual to the team and the
Mhm.
how they. I think it just becomes the work becomes more interesting, even,
Oh yeah.
which is also an important motivation, right? Not to be
Sure.
bored. So
Yes.
and the feeling that you're actually bringing value, that actually it matters what you think, what you do with this data, how do you interpret it, how do you propose the next steps. I think it's a very important development. And I think this is the part that many people underestimate when they talk about the threat of AI to the jobs and everything, because there are certain threats, no way to deny that. But yeah, there is room to build more skills that potentially can lead to more kind of meaningful work.
Mm.
So that's I'm getting more philosophical with this, but going back to the ROI stuff and everything, you've written about a concept you called from shadow AI to ROI. I like the names that you give your work. It's
Yeah.
exciting. Could you walk us through that? And how can an organization take that organic, often unsanctioned experimentation with AI and actually channel it into a strategy that delivers real return?
Mm. And also, it's a good question, and I also, that AI came up with that title, not me.
Okay,
That is one confession. I'm not sure which
great.
model it was, and we were close, but I think okay, or maybe 50%. But yeah, so we did a study in the summer, in June. It was released. It was with 143 executives. A few more people answered, so the next one will be 151. And where we try to find out how are people using AI, how, why are you not using it more? What are you using it for? What
Mhm,
would you like to learn? Like these kinds of things. And I just wanted to see how the leaders of, let's say, there was a lot of working capital, of course, in there, because, that is my network, but it was really all over the place and mostly non-technical people.
mhm,
And most people use this, more than 97%, 97.2, I think it was. And about half of them, a little bit more, say, this is useful. 25% more, they say we could see this to be useful. And the other ones, they were not impressed. But fine, so this, and
sure.
then this NANDA study came out from MIT NANDA just a month later. Very similar numbers, and they said, but the company ROI is hardly measurable. We think there's individual ROI, but the company ROI is just 5%. 95 are considered a failure in terms of ROI, and that was what prompted us to read many more studies. To now, it will be released probably end of this year, next year, as an interactive dashboard. So be a lot of fun to play around with that. And what we are seeing is basically that this is very hard to measure because it is hard to measure on an enterprise scale.
Mhm,
I think that, the studies hint at that. Of course, nobody can be certain that there is extreme ROI in individual cases. If I can publish on LinkedIn, I don't know, twice as fast, three times as fast, because and it's actually good because I edit the content like I do, then there's actually ROI in there. We can talk about business sense, but okay. And actually, and the shadow AI use, a lot of people in the organization, they use this, um, like LLMs, and should they do it? Shouldn't they do it? Sometimes it's mandated, sometimes it's not, and this is like, and the gray area in between, and the MIT study found out that only 40% of the 300 enterprises that they questioned for this study, they have official contracts. They buy an API flat rate or whatever for all the tokens that they want, and then they give it to their employees. But what about the 60%? What are they doing? And nobody can tell me. If I looked at LinkedIn, I see so many M dashes and so many AI isms, LLM isms that like a lot of people are using it. And so coming back to your question, how do we leverage that? I think actually shadow AI is not only a danger. Of course, there can be sensitive data uploaded to who knows where in a way, but we can leverage this. And we can leverage this in a way that we actually make it legal to use AI to experiment with certain hard guardrails around it, but allow some breathing room. I don't know. I don't think that official marketing data that's on the website should be not sent to an LLM. Why not? It's scraped it already. Stuff like that. And what we found out also in workshops, and we have seen Fujitsu doing it. The University of Milan, Politecnico, just released a study on that, is that they did something that is a platform approach. So what they did is actually they put a platform in between the users and leadership, and everybody participated, and they built sort of custom GPTs, so custom assistants that have some data in them. They have very specific instructions, sometimes very long prompts inside them, and they behave a certain way. Maybe they make you a movie recommendation, maybe they write like you do, maybe they research things that interest you, things like that, but on very simple terms. And what this platform thinking actually is to say, we want everybody to be happy with the platform because everybody is a customer of that platform in a way. Just like with Airbnb, in theory, that's the way it was. Maybe not anymore because it gets gotten kind of expensive in a way. But, if you're having an apartment and you're just renting that out, you're a customer of Airbnb. You're leaving your apartment, you're renting it out. If you are renting that, you're a customer of Airbnb, and kind of everybody is happy. And what I would recommend here to do is actually that everybody builds their use cases. We talk about the use cases. Maybe we do hackathons, and that's what we did actually with some clients as well. We do hackathons, and to see what is actually working right now, right? Like what kind of use cases can we see working for individuals? And leadership is the same. They can put in their use cases, and then just share, I think this GPT works really well. What do you think, for my personal research or something like that, or writing drafts for this X amount of clients. And then people got together, they experimented together, and they all became builders. This is kind of a no code or very low code approach. Of course you can code, but usually it's more prompting and giving the LLM direction. And I think this is a genius approach. And the MIT study comes kind of to the same conclusion in a way that say, people who experimented, people who are really maybe passionate about it. That's what you were kind of hinting at your previous answer. Then something happened because we engaged with a technology that is not deterministic like software, but it's probabilistic. It can be a bit frustrating sometimes, the hallucinations, but we are molding it into something that we can use, and that can be from experimenting with it from cooking recipes, and then taking that approach to work and making something else, taking this tiny bit of data, ingesting it into a GPT, and then showing it to a colleague is like, look, this is really cool. You never have to write that draft again. And maybe it doesn't have to be Shakespeare that time. And you can do that. And we found that this works extremely well, even prompting together, and that everybody has at least one good tool in them, and you don't have to be technical for this. That is the best way. So it's kind of a bottom-up approach, right? You cannot
Mhm.
say to people, okay, here's ChatGPT, do whatever you want,
Right.
without any training. But this is the ultimate training because it makes you a practitioner. Not only you can start with prompting, then more complex prompts, then building assistants, and there will be ROI. There will be. I've seen it. I believe it, and I believe the studies, the early studies,
Right, right.
to do
And
this.
it seems like the approach to collaborate more, I think this is where kind of one of the silver lining of what I'm hearing is like collaborate together, work on this, and strategy can be unique in every scenario, but uh, who 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 can build a strategy if not from within? And I actually do like the bottom up approach in the sense that that's where the details come from, right? Because details matter, especially with technology like this, right? So yeah, yeah, interesting. And I've
Yeah.
been a fan of working cross functionally for forever, and I do believe that that's where invention, in the spirit of the podcast name, invention mode. I think that's where when invention happens, when you work together because you know something, you already applied it in your line of work, but then someone else comes and you think, oh, this would fit perfectly with what you do,
Yeah.
and this other person may not even know about it, right? So I have just thought of a certain initiative that I had way back. That was maybe 10 years ago. So no AI was involved at all in that initiative. But in my workplace back then, it was a large corporation and they had an initiative of just that, which I think is very beneficial. They said, okay, all departments, if you want to submit your successes, like your good, high ROI use cases and share. And we'll have all the other departments look at it and just talk about it. So, not for the sake of showcasing, this is what we've done, but rather, this is what we've done. Maybe you can use this too. And I think it's very powerful. And I actually remember a couple projects emerging from that experiment. So, again, not being afraid to talk to each other, experiment more, and yeah, be open
Yeah.
to this, right?
Yeah, and what you just said, to show each other the things, a lot of companies have these kind of jour fixes or something like a weekly thing where somebody presents something that they have done. Could be a lot of things, and you can actually demo these things to each other very easily. And the thing is that, you could build a much better Treasury GPT than I could, even though I'm technical. It doesn't, but you could do it because you have the domain knowledge, and I could support and say, okay, maybe you phrase it this way, maybe we need the data from there to make it more deterministic in some ways.
Yeah.
And that's the crazy thing that is happening now. So the approach that you just talked about, it gets supercharged by LLMs,
Hmm.
um, just because we can use natural language, and you finally, domain experts can, you have now the full deck of cards in your hands. You can even code with natural language, and you could, as
Right.
100%, because you
Yeah.
think very logically, you're domain expert. Um, and that is something really remarkable, I think, and we'll see. I wrote in a post recently that maybe most of the applications will not internal applications, because those were internal applications,
Mhm.
right? Not for external clients. Maybe those will not come from your IT department anymore. But all
Yeah.
of these little assistants flying around, comes from, I don't know, some senior experts or from accounting or
And that's
whatever.
exactly why I actually left my full-time treasury job and started pursuing kind of project work just because of that, because I feel that there is a need in the market for it to help business leaders actually start creating new structures and new systems and new things because now they can. Now anyone can be an inventor. And so that's basically the reason for all of this here. Let's
Yeah.
on a different note, let's talk about your podcast. You are hosting Discover the Ordinary podcast, and if you'd like to share a little bit with the audience about that, and what is the story behind the title, and what do you hope your listeners take away from your conversations there?
Yeah. Yeah, this the podcast originated from my art background, because I used to be, a filmmaker, a designer, and things like that. So though this is very ingrained in my previous life and very, very young years. And I still go out and do street photography a lot of times. And this means you capture ordinary scenes, you find something and you make it extraordinary in a way. So you kind of discover the extraordinary moments in the ordinary. And that's what it's all about. And it kind of became, it was a strategy podcast in a way, also for sales strategy and things, because this is how I spent a lot of my career. But it became an AI podcast just because because of my work focus and my private focus. I'm immersed in this 24/7.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and and as you see, and it applies to even to this case, right? Like if you see, I built this little thing, this little assistant that helps me do X much better, to write much better, or whatever. Have you seen something like this? And it is so ordinary. Sometimes the things that or the smallest applications, the smallest use cases, and then that you can then scale across your whole company, right? Like,
yeah.
and that was one point that I forgot actually. When we actually have this marketplace with all these people making these assistants. Of course, you look at it in a structured way, and then you scale the ones that are really good, and that not only one person can benefit from, but maybe a department or um, also the whole organization. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, no, of
mm,
course. And that's what I actually talk about a lot as well, innovation versus invention. And what something kind of resonates with me when you're saying you can take a small thing, you can scale it, you can see something's working, you can use it in another department. Yes, this is exactly the spirit of inventing new things. So I think it's a new era in a way. Being innovative is good because you have to improve things, but then coming up with totally new things and doing something that you've never done before. This is invention to me, and so this is what I think is ultimately important in this day and age. Well, thank you
yeah.
so much, Daniel, and thank you for coming and for such a thought-provoking conversation. I really enjoyed our talk, and I'm sure our audience did as well. And I hope this we'll talk more in a bit and just see how things are developing, maybe because this field of AI is developing so quickly. So I'm excited for it. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. And thank you, Tanya, very much. Always a pleasure to talk, and anytime, anytime.
Great. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
That's it for today's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, please subscribe and leave a review. It really helps us grow. And I'd love to hear from you. Share your own story of invention with me on LinkedIn. In the coming episodes, we'll continue to decode the mindset, approaches, and cultures that turn what if into what's next. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time on Invention Mode.